that we want to really start off is that starting a fashion business takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of commitment. So I always encourage people to start a fashion business only if they're 100% passionate about fashion and what they wanted to do in their product. And one of the things when we do conceptualize and try to get our business to start, we always start with an idea. From the idea, then we want to go into planning. And planning is a very important phase of the process that is going to take the most time. A lot of entrepreneurs tend to skip the planning phase because it's not sexy, it's not fun, it's not exciting. And so they tend to go straight into, from idea into product development, and then trying to create their website, and then trying to launch. When they launch it, they wonder why the product is not converting. They wonder why they're not getting the sales what they expected. Well, the reason behind is because we a lot of times miss the very important key details that are necessary to take, and steps that are necessary to take in order, A, to save a lot of cost upfront on a trial and error, but most importantly is to be able to get yourself prepared and analyze to make conscious decisions and minimize your risks when you do actually going to launch, so that you do launch the product specifically for your company. From here on, we go in from the idea and we're going into planning phase. From the planning phase, we're going into supply chain. So looking at holistically what is our supply chain and how are we able to then manufacture the product, what factories we have to partner up with, which processes we have to put in place in order for our product to go from the concept all the way through the fulfillment. Only then we start really spending the time developing the product, using creating the tech packs, designing the product itself, and making sure that we have everything we need for us to be able to submit it to our vendors that we have sourced in the sourcing channel. From there, we're going into branding. Branding is an important piece because that is going to be the face of your brand, of your company. This is what people are going to recognize you for. So we want to make sure everything is being prepared from the concept all the way up, from the labels, logos, labels, style guides, and the direction of how we're going to position our brand so that it looks unified and consecutive, so everyone is able to recognize you after time, which that takes time to build up. Then we really start building a point of sale. Point of sale is there's many different ways of doing this, especially when you're doing it for direct to consumer. It's not necessarily has to be done only through your own e-commerce site, but it all goes back into your sales strategy. And sales strategy comes from your planning phase, so which we'll cover in a few minutes of how we're building that up. From there, we actually starting to build marketing strategy and marketing plans, which we definitely want to make sure that we start marketing at least 3 months before we actually soft launch the product. And as you're going to see that it's important, we actually go through 2 phases to launch a product in order for us to assure the success. We do a soft launch first. And then after the soft launch that you do, you're going to test your fulfillment, you're going to test your customer service, making sure that the product is actually getting to the customer the way that you expect it, with the quality. The customer is able to communicate back to you whether there's a feedback necessary, or how are they going to be able to do returns and things like that. And only then, when we know for sure we can validate that all of our ducks are in order, is only then when we're going to go in and actually hit launch. When we follow this roadmap, we guarantee that actually the product that you're going to launch will sell and it will convert, which then results into a happy customer and of revenue growth. From there, you start to figure, you take the next steps. We are going to start talking about the next step, which would be the idea. So before you start planning, before you kind of building your business, and you might have some of the partial things that are completed, like in your point is branding might be already completed, or point of sale might have been already kind of, you started maybe your website, and maybe you already have some product. But really taking a step back and really going back to a drawing board to formalize and be able to write it out. It's very important not just to have it in your head, but actually write it out.
But if we don't address
what is really your brand and your product, and who is your going to be target audience that you envisioning this product for. So one of the things we want to do is we want to talk about the brand concept, and brand concept is really more about formalizing in a small paragraph, a couple sentences, to understand what is your brand all about. What are you going to convey with the brand that you are trying to present? What would be my potentially a mission statement of that brand. But most importantly, what you're trying to come up with is what is your unique selling value proposition? Why are you creating this brand? Why, as if I'm the consumer who gets to interact with your brand, why do I need to buy your product? Today, in today's environment, our consumers are getting smarter and smarter. So they don't want to invest into brands that they do not personally feel connected to. So we want to make sure that we find that connection in our messaging and in our concept, or we try to, maybe with our brand, we try to solve a problem for them. Maybe they have a certain particular problem that they're trying to solve, and with our product, with our brand, we're giving them that solution. Thing we wanted to look at the customer persona, and customer persona in this particular phase, it's our intake, our vision of what that customer, who is that customer is. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we look at the customer from our first hand. Imagine you would be describing a customer as yourself, right? So potentially that could be where it's a single mom, or it's a working mom, working mom with a couple, with a couple of kids, of median income of $80,000 as an example. I'd love to shop on Amazon. I love to shop boutique stores. I look for more of an eco-friendly product. So we really want to try to, and you want to identify what age bracket I am, right? So maybe I'm between 35 to 45-year-old woman. So we really want to describe that customer persona in our mind and writing it out, so that we can then validate in our planning phase if that's the customer that we actually want to go after. Because we can't launch a product or a brand without really understanding our customer, because as I mentioned, customers needs to feel, they need to understand that their product was specifically for them. And so we need to make them believe, and we need to also ourselves cater everything that we do in branding as well as in our product to making sure that we're delivering the most important things the customer actually desires and wants. That is the secret sauce of conversion in order for the customer to actually purchase your product. The next thing we wanted to do is conceptualize the collection concept. In this particular case, we're still not designing, we're still not doing anything, investing any money. We're really just putting on paper what is our collection, what is our brand, what is our product is all about. So now we're really describing the product itself, whether that's women's apparel, and we'll look at maybe potentially some categories that are specifically that we're going to target a niche. Maybe we're looking at more of a general home goods that we are trying to design or trying to create. And those are going to be all eco-friendly products that are really used for decoration of the home and so forth. So we're really trying to just conceptualize what that product is, what that who that product is for, and what is our brand trying to solve, or what is our brand trying to offer to the market. The next phase that we're moving forward with from the idea is the planning phase. And that is the phase that you want to spend a lot of time in, because you want to, before you move on to the any other phases, because this is the phase that's going to give you the data, the research, the validation that your idea is actually valid to go forward with and make sense. Idea of planning and making sure that you have making your business on paper profitable before you're going to invest time and money into actually developing that business, and then realizing down the road that it's either not profitable, or it wasn't even worth doing, or it's not even the right market for it. So this is where, and we actually start also doing an assortment planning, which again, we're still not investing anything, but we're starting to really formalize what is our assortment going to look like, so that we can then potentially look for the correct suppliers, as well as for the correct and cater our branding to make sure that it matches to the product that we're going to serve to the customer. So this is where we always start validating our idea with market and competitive research. So market research is really more covering about the segment of the market that you are planning to go after, identifying the niche of the market that you are going to cater to, understanding how much value, how much money is in that particular segment, and what piece of a pie are you potentially going to be able to hit? What would be your opportunity if you are going to hit your goals? What would be the opportunities that you could be able to carve out of that particular market? Understanding as well, potentially, as you're looking through your market research, understanding opportunities, and I call them white holes, that might potentially, you might be able to then address towards with your product or the brand. Once you defined the market, then you really want to look at the competitors that are within that market, that in your space, that are potentially have a similar or like product, or catering to the same exact customer demographic and trying to solve a similar problem that you're trying to solve, and see how they're doing it. See what works for them, what success, what is this defined success for them, and what potentially does not work for them. Looking at their price points, looking at their product qualities, looking at how are they selling, where are they selling that product, where are they marketing in that product. So really diving in and understanding who your competition is very important. Once we create the market and competitive research and validate that, yes, we found our niche, we feel good and strongly about that, we have a unique selling value proposition among what are our weaknesses and strengths about our competition, and really understanding the competitors like it would be your own family. We then really starting to then validate the customer, and by doing a consumer research. Consumer research really validates back to your customer persona. So if you envisioned a working mom with several kids with a median income of $80,000, well, we want to make sure we be able to then compare and actually validate a consumer from the consumer spending reports. We want to validate, are they actually spending money in your segment? Are they actually care about the product in your segment? And how much money are they spending? And what would be the average price that they would spend on a similar product? And the reason we want to validate the consumer research with the consumer research, our customer persona, because often when we actually start validating, we might pivot and understand that maybe instead of focusing on the 35 to 45-year-old woman, we might need to take it a notch down because they're spending much more money or be in this particular segment, or they're more interested, or we might want to take it a notch up because they are more investing in the luxury goods and if in case if you're in a luxury business. So one of the things that I think are very important and often missed is really validating the consumer that you're thinking you have versus to who you actually should be targeting in order for you to be able to hit your goals. And again, that helps you to, part of the competitive research is going to be also looking at their consumer and making sure that you would be actually in line with what their target audience is. Because again, if you are putting them in the same bucket of the competition, you want to make sure you also be able to understand how they're targeting and who are they targeting as well. The next thing you do is you do price point analysis. Again, looking at your competitors based on product categories and product itself. You want to analyze the price points that are often offered for that particular product so that we are able to then understand where is our sweet spot. So as we're going to launch or develop our product, what do we need to target and aim? A lot of entrepreneurs tend to start with creating a product, creating a cost sheet, understanding how much it costs them to create it, and then mark it up. And then from there, just put the price tag on it. And then they ask, well, how come it doesn't sell? Well, because you might be completely out of the range of your price point compared to your competitors. So the best tactic is to work backwards. Understand where you need to be with the product price. And then when we do the sourcing, when we do the product development, we retrofit the product so that it can meet the margins that are necessary and at the same time meet the desired price point range that you have discovered in your planning phase. The next thing, we want to look at the sales channels. Sales channel strategy, and again, it goes off from the research that we're doing here. And the way we build it up is not necessarily that it has to be directly going into your own website and creating your own website only. The best way to build a strategy is to, again, understand how is your competitors selling it and where are they selling it. We are looking at the sales channel piece. We want to make sure that we look at where are they also are potentially selling. Potentially, they might have it on a third-party platform in addition to the website. Potentially, they might be also doing an in-store direct sales. Potentially, they might be doing a pop-up events, or as well as also aligning and asking yourself when we're doing a consumer research, where is my customer shopping? Meaning, because remember, once you create your own brand line and once you create your own website, by the time you're going to get discovered, it takes a lot of time and money in marketing to invest to be able to be discoverable. So one of the things sometimes a great strategy is understanding where your consumer is shopping most of the times, which a lot of times would be big platforms like Amazon, Walmart, Macy's, Nordstrom's, and things like that, where you can actually create a third-party seller account where you could be able to then launch your product in a much more efficient way because your customer is already there. So you can actually get your product much quicker in front of the consumer's eyes versus just going through your own website, as an example. So really understanding where your competitors are selling as well as where your customer is shopping. And that's how we build the sales channel strategy to try to understand where do we want to, how are we going to position it, where are we going to target. Maybe it's potentially could be where we wanted to go into B2B market and actually just sell it to retailers because we're seeing that this particular customer are actually at the large retailers or boutique stores for the most of the times. So again, that's how we build and understand where the sales channels that you want to focus on. The next thing you want to think about marketing channels, same thing. where the customer is typically, depending on your age bracket, depending on your customer persona and where they are, which platforms are you utilizing to actually understand and to discover products, and in marketing does not always have to be social media. Perhaps it could be paid search ads, it could be the Google ads, it could be the of course, organic marketing, it could be email marketing. So really understanding what are they gravitating towards, which will give you all that information once you are going through consumer research. You're going to find that information again based on a generational, well, maybe generational, maybe just age category, maybe it's particular a segment of people that are be able to been studied in the consumer research studies. Once we created all of that, we then starting to look at assortment planning. And assortment planning in this particular case is really building a grid on good, better, and best scales to make sure that you do have a variety of product to hit your entering point customer and customer who is already be able to spend a little bit more and committed, and then a customer who is coming back over and over again, but also they want to get more of a luxury, let's say, items from your collection. So once we build the assortment planning, then we look at the categories, we look at the product subcategories, we look at potential number of SKUs, we'll look at seasonality, whether your product is seasonal versus non-seasonal. So you're really trying to build a grid that is helping you to really structure of what your potential collection, what potential product will look like. But this gives you a way to think through how to do it lean and how to do it not too broad, so that it's focused specifically to your consumer. Once we completed all of that, now we're starting to ready to build a budget and 5-year projection plan. I can't stress enough how many entrepreneurs are skipping this step altogether, and they're just moving on with into the development, where this is the most important thing when we're building a business, because that's going to give you a validation whether this particular business that you're planning to go forward with can be profitable. And in order for it to be profitable, how many things you need to sell, at what year, how fast you have to expend it, how much resources you're going to have to put in, how much money you need to budget for marketing, and as well as the startup costs. But this is an important step that I always say, do not skip, and make it profitable on paper, make it work on paper first before you move any further with anything else that you're doing in terms of your business and in terms of your product developments. It will save you a lot of money in upfront costs. And the idea is in the budgeting and the 5-year projection plan, as you build it, the goal is for any new business to be at minimum to be able to break even by year 3 and be profitable by year 5. When I say profitable by year 5, meaning you're already drawing your own salary, you're already able to actually make enough profits to reinvest back into the business. First 2 years, most often, all of your profits are going to go back into the business to be reinvested so that you can continue grow it, reinvest it into your marketing so you can continue grow it, your customer base, and so forth. But by year 3, you definitely should be able to break even, at least on paper, in order for you to be able to only then you wanted to move forward. So first, we're trying to figure it out what we need to do, where we need to be before then we started to build how we're going to get it. So a lot of times we start with the how, but we don't really know what we actually need and what we need, where we're trying to go. So this is where it really becomes very important that we really understand it and spend time in that particular bucket to making sure that we have everything validated and moving forward. And let's talk a little bit about the next phase, would be the supply chain. So as we then build the assortment planning, and now we have a plan in place, we know our budget, we know how many units we projecting to sell in the first year in order for us to get to a certain goal, what we need to do for the second year, what we need to do for the third year. We know how we're going to distribute this product. we're now starting to really understand what we need to do. Now we're starting to really build how we're going to do it. And this is where we always start. A lot of people think of supply chain, oh, I just need to find a vendor to do it with. Well, supply chain actually, it needs to really involve an end-to-end process first. An end-to-end process is really taking a step back and understanding how is your business going to operate from the concept all the way to fulfillment, and how are the things are going to be interlinked, and are you doing an outsourcing where the vendor is going to do all of the fulfillment as well for you, or you're doing a fulfillment separately? And how are you going to bring in the product? Where is going to be your value chain map, like building a value chain map, understanding where your product needs to come from? Are you going to import? Are you going to be doing it domestically? And those are important questions to ask before we start sourcing, because we want to make sure that we do our sourcing effectively. And that when we do look for vendors which become our partners in the long run, we want to make sure that we come to them with a clear vision and a clear plan of what would be the requirements that we would need to require from them. What is a kind of capacity that we would be talking in year 1, year 2, year 3, potentially, so that we understand how big or small the vendor needs to be, what our MOQs needs to be. So it's not us trying to discover a vendor and then trying to retrofit into our business. It's the other way around. We need to go after exactly of what we need and what we want in order for us to achieve our goals. Then we could be able to then get vendors that are definitely going to fit into what our model is and become our long-term partners. Manufacturer vendors appreciate entrepreneurs or companies who are coming to them with a clear vision and a clear plan. They tend to do more for them. They tend to meet them in halfway and in many different ways in terms of pricing, because they want to invest in them to build a long-term relationship. Once we get to that part, once we get to the end process and value chain map, now we're starting to source. And we're starting to source, whether you're sourcing raw materials, where if you're doing cut and sew, it'll be raw materials and product manufacturers. Maybe you are doing already finished goods that you don't want to, because of your model, maybe potentially that you don't want to have any type of operations in terms of where you have to manage from a cutting service to the marking, grading, marking, cutting service, and then sewing, and then potentially maybe dyeing or manufacturing. That if you don't want to manage all of that, because your business model might be very lean, and that you're actually trying to build it where you could be less hands-on on the manufacturing side, but more hands-on the sales side, then you might want to look for the vendors that can do it all, right? Who can do the full package deal. So this is why it's important to understand your value chain map and then your end-to-end process before you start doing the sourcing piece. Looking potentially at the packaging manufacturers, or again, if you do it a full package, maybe those are the guys who are going to do all of it for you. Once we define the sourcing vendors, once we identify couple of sourcing vendors per your main key items. And the reason I say couple, you always want to have two. So one would be a backup vendor and one would be your primary vendor. You'll start with testing both, but then building your model, how you're going to be able to keep them both busy long enough so that they could always be a backup one to one another. I mean, with COVID years, I think with the pandemic, we all learned a hard lesson, that things can happen, things can change in the world. So we want to always making sure that we have at least two vendors that can cover us for our at least main products that drive most of our business. We look at inventory and warehousing fulfillment centers or options. Or if you are, again, doing it with the vendor who is going to do the full package deal, maybe that's them. Maybe you're working with a 3PL. Maybe you are fulfilling yourself. So I really understanding what is the most economical way of actually getting us through that particular process. And so how is our customer now going to receive the product? Very important is to confirm lead times on everything. So as you're having a conversation with any of your vendor, any supplier, any service provider, You want to make sure that you validate their lead times and you create term sheets for them to sign after once you actually are starting to work with them, so that they are committed to delivering in the lead times that they have quoted. Very important, because that's what's going to drive how you're going to build your timeline calendars, as well as how are you going to be able to make sure that you're going to get the product to your customer on time and with enough padding to their lead times to make sure that there's going to be no surprises. Because again, it's very easy to, it's not easy to find a customer to come and buy from you once. It's even harder to have that customer and have a great experience and enjoy your product and come back and buy it again. And your goal is always to have a reoccurring customers and while you're building your customer base. So very important that we started off from the supply chain to make sure that we then able to backtrack and create processes, timelines that can make sure that it validates and helps us to get the product in time to our consumers. Then only now we have the supply chain. Now we know what type of vendors we're going to go work with, what capabilities they have. We are now starting to really design the product. And then designing the product is really looking now back to our assortment planning. And potentially it could be some of the product that you design completely, some of the product that you might be just doing white label, right? Where you can actually just buy the product and put your label on it. So that some of the product could be potentially drop ships from, if you're, maybe doing a retail site, potentially you might be able to just drop ship some of the third-party product that intermixes into your assortment, or at least at the beginning, so you can test the market, so you don't have to invest a lot in inventory. As you can see, I always have this caution at the very bottom to lower your risk. I highly recommend, if you can, do anything on demand production, so that you don't have to, it's better to take a hit on your margin at the beginning, but test the market. So with no inventory, before you actually starting to invest in inventory. But when you do ready to invest in inventory, take inventory planning very seriously before you start buying. And inventory planning really goes back hand to hand with your projections. So based on your projections, you need to understand how much inventory potentially you need to get those sales. How are you going to layer them so you don't bring them all at once? And so with that, we're trying to making sure that we want our product, and so, our inventory positions that we potentially might be able to have to bring in are actually going off of our plans and our budgets. So this is where it becomes a very important, going back into the planning and finish the idea, finish the planning phase, refine what you will come up with. And then after that, then you can kind of go back into all of the next phases to build the point of sales and marketing with the product that you actually do have. With the product that you do have, however, you have already a great opportunity to make sure that the product fits. You can, I'm assuming you already have it sampled, so you can now you can actually start doing a consumer testing and feedback. So usually, before we even start doing soft launch and launch, we highly recommend is to test your product with the consumer, which means now you have a consumer, you know who your consumer should be, right, based on your plan. Now you can create either a consumer focus groups, could be that are specifically in a face-to-face with the product interaction setting. That could be done through the event. So that could be done as where you invite people coming in and really interacting with your product as a pop-up, or as well as surveying. So we recommend to do both, because surveying, you can be able to get to a wider range of your potential customer and really understand. By surveying, is you serving them with understanding your price point, if your price point is right for your product, if your product is actually solving their problems or whatever that it's addressing their needs. You also able to maybe understand, if they would buy this product, where would they buy it, so that you can really try to understand for them to interact now with your actual line, with your actual product virtually. They can be able to provide you that feedback. There's many ways of doing it. And as well as it's really beneficial to do it where the customer is your potential customer through the focus groups can actually come, touch, feel, try your product, and provide you again all of the same feedback, so that you can understand whether you need to pivot and make adjustments versus it's validating that it's good, it's ready for the market, and it will work. A lot of times when we miss this particular step, we go into soft launch, we're going to the launch, but again, we've never validated our product. And our product might have been really needed a little bit of a tweak or potentially completely revamped before we actually invest in inventory and everything else. So this is where it's really important piece. And now if you do have already a product, this could be a great opportunity for you to start with, to really understand and learn from the potential consumer of how you want to sell this product and what else do you need to do to this product in order for them to be able to be able to convert. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So then from there, of course, you want to be open-minded to revisions. I know as fashion designers and entrepreneurs, we love what we do. We fall in love with with the products we create. But as we always say, the best artist is not the one who painted a beautiful masterpiece and loves it, but who is critical to what they have created and able to step back and then to see the changes, to see an opportunities to change, to make it better and improve. So this is where it's important that we are open-minded again, especially as we're conducting this consumer testing and research and feedback, to actually hear the consumer, because the consumer will tell you, but your potential consumer target audience will tell you whether this product is right or whether this product needs to be adjusted. Once you are finished with your revisions, this is when we start working with the product images preparation and lifestyle product images and videos, especially if you're doing an e-commerce sales or e-commerce, any type of e-commerce business. That's what's going to break or make your sale. Because again, the customer has no way to interact with your product physically. So they need to be able to really get the quality of the images and images that do follow a specific specific map that will convert. That you want to make sure that you are following those type of templates and then making sure that it also falls in line with your competitors. Like looking at the color scheme, looking at how the competitors are presenting that type of a product or similar like product, because if it's working for them, there's no need for you to reinvent your wheel completely, right? We just need to take what's working and make it a little bit better. That's the kind of the secret sauce here. But again, there is a specific templates and specific requirements that you wanted that you can follow that are actually proven to convert in when it comes to product images. We then start to work on branding. And of course, branding, you might have worked already up front or kind of simultaneously. I don't ever recommend to start working on branding before you complete your plan phase, because again, your research might pivot or might be able to give you a validation of what your branding really needs to look like. Because again, you want to see what your customer is gravitating towards, right? Between your competitors and as well as just between who your target audience really truly is. Because again, you're doing the branding not for your product. You need to be able to do a branding that is not only obviously conveys the message of your product and your brand, but also be able to the customer can connect to, that they can feel it, right? That they can like it from the get-go. Because it's going to make your life much easier in that sense versus trying to, of course, with time, it doesn't matter what you might have, what kind of a logo you might have, or what kind of color scheme you might have. With time, if your product does sell, people will start recognizing it, and then they're just going to accept it the way it is. But it makes it much more easier that if it's really hitting your audience and you're hitting your target demographic and we're staying within the kind of competitive market. So looking at creating a logo, looking at what your neck labels would look like, your hang tags, packaging, making sure that your logos are trademarked, And then what's really often missed in the branding phase is building a brand style guide. And brand style guide is so important to have, not only for you to stay in line with your own brand, to make sure that all of your marketing, all of your point of sale, everything points to this color scheme, to the logo usage, proper logo usage of your brand, but it's the consistency, right? We're looking for consistency because customers are, it's a commission, they get trained, right? So if they see the same thing over and over again, they're going to start to recognize it. But if they start to seeing slight variations of one thing over and over again, then they'll get confused. And so it's really more about not only for you, but also for your vendors to follow, for your marketing team to follow potentially, for your anybody who's really getting in touch with your brand. And if you're doing a B2B sales later on, for those retailers to follow as well, to make sure that they are keeping the integrity of your brand as they are promoting their product and trying to sell the. So we are now kind of want to talk today. I wanted to start talking about the point of sales. As I've mentioned yesterday and throughout our class, that everything starts with understanding your consumer. Everything starts with understanding your competitive competition. And where are they selling their product? Where is the consumer shopping, not specifically for your product, but where are they shopping in general? Because where they are, that's where you want to be, which that dictates our sales channel strategy and kind of understand what would be the sales channels that we could potentially capitalize on as we are building our brand. Of course, most of the entrepreneurs firsthand will say, well, I'm going to have my own e-commerce site. And not saying that that's not important. That is definitely a great option, but it is a long-term play and it's a costly play because it does require quite a bit marketing dollars spent to drive traffic to your site, making sure that the site is fully optimized with SEO so that the Google will rank it, so that you are coming up in the Google search for the important keywords that your customer is going to be searching for your product. So definitely an important aspect to have, but not necessarily might be the primary sales channel you want to start with. The next thing to think about, what potential direct-to-consumer marketplaces that you could launch your product on that your customer already shopping. The biggest one, as we know, is Amazon. But of course, there are others like Walmart, Macy's, Nordstrom's, Etsy, depending on your product, Rumble, depending on what product you're creating and where your customer is actually shopping, there might be an opportunity to create a storefront on those platforms, and with smaller investment on marketing dollars and capital, you'll have a higher chance to outreach your consumer and be able to get your brand exposed and start generating sales. So one of those things to really think about, to consider where we could be able to launch that in addition to while you're building your website, so that you can start generating the income and be able to revenue and be able to reinvest back into continue developing the site with all of the proper SEO and marketing behind it. The next thing that to think about is direct sales, direct to consumer sales in the store, or potentially doing a pop-up shops. So if your customer is primarily shopping brick and mortar based on your demographic, potentially partnering up with the stores where you could either rent a rack or you could consign your product at the beginning, or be able to reach to the stores through the B2B strategy to be able to do wholesale to them. So your product could be sold at the physical locations. A pop-up shops is a great opportunity where you can actually coordinate with the store, rent a space or a corner in the particular store that you know, maybe it's in a neighborhood that you know your customer is shopping and they're always there, so that you could be able to introduce your product and sell it that way. There's ways to coordinate with the stores where you can do a profit sharing, as well as where you could just pay a little bit of rent for them to be able to give you some space. Of course, there's the other option is events and markets. Depending on your product, if your customer is most likely going to be at the specific events or attending specific markets, is to consider whether that's going to be an opportunity to reach your customer and build your sales strategy around that as well. So as you can see, it's really not only black and white where you have to have your own e-commerce site. Sometimes it's actually better to start off with a third marketplace in the e-commerce world, or maybe a pop-up event shops or events and markets to test your market, to introduce your product to the consumer, start getting engagement and generating sales, while then reinvesting it into the e-commerce website as you are building it up. However, of course, we don't want to dismiss that the e-commerce site is important, or a website is important, depending on what strategy you are taking. If you are taking it to a B2B sales strategy strictly, then you don't really need an e-commerce website. What you do need is an informational site about your brand, so that you'll be able to then appoint to which stores your product could be found. But we do want it to be, of course, discoverable, and as well as if the customer wants to validate what is the brand about and who is the brand and learn more about the brand, they do need to have some sort of a landing website where they could be able to learn about your product. Assuming that you're going to get into the e-commerce website, it's not necessarily to build an e-commerce website from scratch. There are platforms, as you know, that you could be able to utilize, Shopify, WooCommerce. There are templates that you could use from Wix, that you can inexpensively build a website. However, as you are starting to build a website, a couple of things very important to consider is the UI and UX experience, to make sure that your website is clean, easy to navigate, doesn't have a lot of clicks until you get to the product. One of the things to consider, with every click, you're losing about 50% of people who are landed on the first page or on the first link that they have got to your website. So you want to always minimize the amount of clicks. Making sure that your website aesthetics and functionalities are in line with your competition, right? So when you are, again, doing the competitive research, to pay attention, how is their websites are structured? How do they flow? What are the color schemes that are your customers gravitating onto those competitive sites? Because you might find similarities that you might want to adopt to make sure that your site looks the part in line with your competition. The next thing, as we start to build on an e-commerce site, or whether you're going to do it on a third-party platform, the most important part becomes images. Images and product pages is what going to sell your product. So images, for the product images, we definitely want to have a front, back, and details. However, there are guidelines that proven to convert when we create product images. As an example, it's proven that on the men's product, for example, you wanted to do more of just a product shot against the white ground, where on the women's, they actually want to see it on the body. So actually doing it on the body on the actual female body with a head cut off halfway, for example, will convert better than a body with a full head. We've done quite a bit of studies with large retailers trying to figure out what will convert the best. And for example, that would be one of the examples. And then supplemented that with the product images that are against the white ground, again, front, back, and details. Very important to shoot your images in a high resolution so that they are not fuzzy, so that they look very crisp and professional. Looking at adding the product descriptions, making sure that it talks about the material, it talks about the fit, it talks about the sizing, it talks about the color, and other additional information that can help customer make the decision. Looking at your image and looking at the descriptions that you have, they need to feel confident enough to click buy and actually buy the product. A lot of times what happens when entrepreneurs get surprised where the customer gets to their product pages, but they look at it, but then they drop off. That means a lot of times we either gave them too many choices that they couldn't make a decision what product they wanted to buy, or we didn't give them enough information or confidence that this product is going to meet the quality standard as well as the fit for them to make the decision to buy. So really important, why I highlighted the bottom is size charts. Making sure that, especially if you're doing an apparel product, you want to include size charts for the customer to be able to understand and relate how your product is going to fit, because they cannot fit it, try it on, obviously, in the fitting room like they would be doing it in the store. This is where it gets really great when you are doing a consumer testing and feedback, is to get some testimonials about the product potential. If you're doing some of the focus groups, record some of the testimonials or have them write some of the feedback and testimonials about the product that you can include in your product pages, at least at the beginning, while you are trying to gather some feedback from your actual real customers, so that it could give confidence again to the customer, to your new customers, of what this product is about and how this product is going to fit and things like that. And the most important thing when you are doing anything on e-commerce, especially with your website, is to make sure that everything is SEO optimized. SEO optimization, it takes time. Takes time from the very beginning, investing time in research, understanding which keywords your customer would be searching in order to be able to find a similar or like your product, as well as look at your competition and see where your competitors are, what type of keywords they are using and bidding on, to be able to drive traffic to their sites and to their product. Starting with the keywords, you write a copy for your descriptions as well as for your meta tags in the back end of the website, as well as alternative tags for all of your images, so that when you do launch your website, or even if it's on the third-party marketplace, when you start running your marketing, you want to make sure that you get indexed at the very beginning as high as you can possibly can. It's almost impossible to be indexed and right away be on the first pages. It's if anybody ever promises you that, I'd say probably they're really not promising you the real truth. Because usually what happens is that you do get indexed and you will fall into a place, maybe potentially second page, third page, or wherever else. And the next thing is where you then go in and start optimizing it. And optimization of SEO is where you are really fine-tuning the copy, you're fine-tuning the, again, keywords. And then before you're starting to really look at which ones you're going to bid on, so that you could be able to rank higher and climb up to the first pages where ideally you want to be. This product is going to meet the quality standard as well as the fit for them to make the decision to buy. So really important, why I highlighted the bottom is size charts. Making sure that, especially if you're doing an apparel product, you want to include size charts for the customer to be able to understand and relate how your product is going to fit, because they cannot fit it, try it on, obviously, in the fitting room like they would be doing it in the store. This is where it gets really great when you are doing a consumer testing and feedback, is to get some testimonials about the product potential. If you're doing some of the focus groups, record some of the testimonials or have them write some of the feedback and testimonials about the product that you can include in your product pages, at least at the beginning, while you are trying to gather some feedback from your actual real customers, so that it could give confidence again to the customer, to your new customers, of what this product is about and how this product is going to fit and things like that. And the most important thing when you are doing anything on e-commerce, especially with your website, is to make sure that everything is SEO optimized. SEO optimization, it takes time. Takes time from the very beginning, investing time in research, understanding which keywords your customer would be searching in order to be able to find a similar or like your product, as well as look at your competition and see where your competitors are, what type of keywords they are using and bidding on, to be able to drive traffic to their sites and to their product. Starting with the keywords, you write a copy for your descriptions as well as for your meta tags in the back end of the website, as well as alternative tags for all of your images, so that when you do launch your website, or even if it's on the third-party marketplace, when you start running your marketing, you want to make sure that you get indexed at the very beginning as high as you can possibly can. It's almost impossible to be indexed and right away be on the first pages. It's if anybody ever promises you that, I'd say probably they're really not promising you the real truth. Because usually what happens is that you do get indexed and you will fall into a place, maybe potentially second page, third page, or wherever else. And the next thing is where you then go in and start optimizing it. And optimization of SEO is where you are really fine-tuning the copy, you're fine-tuning the, again, keywords. And then before you're starting to really look at which ones you're going to bid on, so that you could be able to rank higher and climb up to the first pages where ideally you want to be. So as we, of course, all know, we can't sell a product if we don't market it, or at least people will find out that you're actually going to sell it. So we do want to make sure before we start doing a soft launch, one of our biggest recommendation is to start marketing your product at least 3 months ahead, so that you can start creating a hype, or you can start creating an awareness of what's coming. And you're going to start acquiring customers, potential customers, emails, potential customers' information, so that you could then be able to really, when you are ready to launch and when you're ready to soft launch, you can really truly target your potential customer. But marketing plan, before we start marketing plan, it all starts with marketing strategy. And this is where a lot of entrepreneurs get it confused, and they skip the strategy altogether and they go straight into planning and content creation and campaign creation. And one of the things where they fail is because they are spending a lot of money and just spinning their wheels and surprised why it's not working, because it was not done strategically. So marketing strategy comes first. And the best way to think about marketing, difference between marketing plan versus marketing strategy, is marketing strategy is a skeleton. It's a skeleton, or like a map, a roadmap, or if you would think of a process map, right? It gives you a skeleton of where you're going to market and how, and from which platform from which your campaigns will flow one into the other, and which comes first, which comes next. So how do we build marketing strategy? Again, it goes back to your competitive advantage competitive research, as well as your consumer research. In combination of the two, by this time in your planning phase, you've identified who is your target audience and where are they? Like if they do choose a social media, do they choose Instagram? Do they choose Facebook? Do they choose TikTok? Where are they? Where they primarily are spending their time on? Same as how are they finding out information? Are they using it mostly on Google search, or are they looking through magazines, as an example, right? If we look at the traditional type of marketing, or is the customer or in your competition is actually spending more time on creating more of the Google shop, spending more time on investing in Google Shopping so that they will rank in Google Shopping versus potentially they are doing a social media campaigns to attract the new customers. So really understanding what in combination of what competition doing and where your customer is, you start to build your marketing strategy. You never want to be on all the social media platforms. I mean, I always say don't do more than two, but in the very beginning, you might want to start with one. Of course, if you do an Instagram, a lot of time Instagram and Facebook can go hand to hand, but you also have to remember that in today's environment, social media marketing is very expensive and it doesn't ROI in sales as it was, for example, in 2013. So what, as appealing as it sounds and everybody seems like doing it, sometimes that might not be the most precious place to spend money on. Definitely we want to have a presence on it, but not necessarily spending our marketing dollars at the very beginning to market on social media. So as we build our strategy, it could look like, as an example, where we wanted to focus on organic marketing that comes from the social media into then targeted campaigns for us, with the goal for us to gain access to the emails and information to the customer. Potentially, then we market that into. We potentially might also do some sort of events because, for example, if our customer is really more driven around markets and events, then potentially we want to place ourselves within the events that they're already in, so that again we can gather their information and their emails. And we really want to focus on email marketing as we are starting to expand and build our customer base or email base. Email marketing actually still converts fairly well. And so that's a great strategy to go and fairly inexpensive to do. You can actually do it pretty much for free as long as you have the email base pool. However, we would want to also take a look at paid search ads as well as bidding on keywords. But I highly recommend to turn on only when you're doing a hard launch, meaning prior to your hard launch, we would turn that on probably a couple of months before, so that we could be able to then start bringing more people to your website, and as well as really making sure that the money that we're spending on paid search, as you're getting discovered, they're able to transact and buy your product directly from your website at your launch. Another option could be looking at, if you are more in traditional marketing, if your customers gravitates more to traditional marketing, then you might want to be able to then look at potentially working with some agencies that will help you be placed in magazines or ads, creating ads in the magazines or write-ups, articles that can help to get an exposure to your particular product. So it could be a combination of multiple things. But you really need to understand your clear road path of where you're going to start, where those campaigns are going to, what those campaigns are going to do for you in those particular channels. Again, not all of them are going to be necessarily going to drive sales for you, but some of them serve more for the awareness and brand awareness and kind of getting people to be able to share them. Your goal is always to get people's email, right? Because that's what it gives you an opportunity to then turn that potential lead customer into a real customer. Only then we start to build a marketing plan, marketing calendar. And your marketing calendar always should be 3 months before your launch or a soft launch, and then 6 months after the launch. So you always want to work 6 months ahead, so that you are able to lay out all your content ideas, a schedule of when you're going to post or when you're going to send in a marketing campaign or whatever else. And usually it's kind of like a waterfall effect, so that it's, one starts with one and then it kind of merges to the other, and then it's layers on, so that you are capitalizing on each of the ad or campaign that you're going to create. So it's not just content that you're going to create. And only then we start to build content. So as you can see, a lot of times, which that is usually done in reverse by many entrepreneurs, and that is why they get surprised why it's not working. They go straight to content instead of actually first mapping it out and planning it out. What are they going to do? With marketing calendar, you're going to consider different types of the holiday times, events, so that you are able to create a flow, so that you can create a potentially not necessarily, I would say, start off with a discount, but potentially maybe some promos that really can wheel in the customer to come and gravitate and buy. Especially if your product is giftable, this could be another great opportunity to make sure that you layer that all in. So now, as we have a marketing plan, we have a marketing strategy as a first marketing plan, and now we have the content, we start to market. We're starting to create and build up the awareness so that about our soft launch. And when we do a soft launch, the reason I say we don't do a hard launch right away, because the goal of our soft launch is to really create a collection preview, to create a hype around the brand and then build up the interest around the brand. It gives us a chance to start really marketing the product. It's really giving us a chance to start getting the momentum of the consumer to start, potential consumers to start coming into you, and you start building out your email lists. That takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. So if you are starting it tomorrow, but you're planning to launch a week from now, the chances of you having a successful launch are going to be much more slimmer than if you started 3 months ahead and had a chance attraction at least of 3 months of starting gathering the information and getting these people to follow and be interested in your product and in your brand. As you know, like when you are anticipating to go to a party, right? You typically get an invitation ahead of time, and then you build up an anticipation about, while you're talking to your friends about that party, it builds up inside you where you get so excited. So by the time the day comes of going to a party, you're all hyped up and excited. So we want to create a similar feel and creation around your brand when we're doing marketing and when we are creating this soft launch. But it also allows you to create a pre-orders of your collection so that you don't necessarily have to invest in inventory straight away. So soft launch is a great way to start getting attraction on orders without getting a commitment of inventory up front. So you could create a pre-orders for the collection. This is a really appropriate time to do that during the soft launch. So that you could be able to see which styles, as you're marketing, which styles of people are pre-ordering. So that gives you a direction when you are ready to do a full launch. It gives you the direction of where to invest your money in terms of inventory. So remember, we're all about trying to lower the risk and not to bring inventory too upfront. Your goal is to figure out how can you create this opportunity to know exactly what you're going to invest so that you know this is going to sell. It really becomes a great customer data acquisition machine during the soft launch period and marketing period. Data acquisition customers data acquisition is the number one priority for any business, because again, anytime you have information of a potential customer, you have a chance to turn them into your real customer. It also gives you a chance to do a test order play, to test how the people are able to place orders, how the flow of your website, for example, or your shop is going, how you're able to process those orders with your vendors, place orders with your vendors as a test to make sure that they're actually able to deliver like they were quoting you and we're able to commit. So soft launch is very important in the success of a primary launch. So the next piece, after we've finished a soft launch, that gives us an opportunity to not only preview the collection, hopefully by now we got some pre-orders for the collection. We are starting to produce those pre-orders. We tested how the orders are being flown through the vendor to the vendors, from the vendors back to the customer. But it gives us now the chance to also pause and double check that our fulfillment is intact and we are able to fulfill the orders, which is the test order process, the test order fulfillment, and most importantly is to test order product and packaging quality when it reaches to the customer. The reason why this is so important, as I mentioned before, it's very difficult to get a customer to buy it once. It's even harder for the customer to come back and buy again. And the only way a customer will come back and buy again if they're fully satisfied with not only the experience of getting your product, but as well as when they got the product, they love the quality, they love the packaging or everything else that came around your product, that of the experience of opening up that package and receiving your product, but also making sure that it fits, it has it meets all the characteristics that we've promised them on, before they hit buy, and making sure, the most importantly, that it got to them on time. And so when we tend to go straight to a big launch, but have not really tested our fulfillment, a lot of times where we fail is we got all these orders during launch, but we were not able to fulfill those orders on time. That all of these new customers that we spent all this time and effort to get, we lost them. So it's better to better test it on a smaller group during your soft launch. And during the soft launch, you can set the expectations that it is a soft launch. You might you pad your delivery time, right? Especially on the pre-orders. If your customer vendor is quoting you a week, you might pad it to 2 weeks for your consumer, so that you can really understand where you're actually going to land, so that when you are doing a real launch, you know exactly what you need to quote to your customer then. So fulfillment is very important. Of course, as a entrepreneurs who's starting up on your own, you might be doing fulfillment yourself, or potentially you might partner up with a 3PL who could do a fulfillment for you, or you have an option as well, working with your vendor and having your vendor to fulfill your orders, which some vendors do that as well. However, if you go that route, you do want to, again, test, which will potentially become your own customer of your own brand, place an order yourself, and see how that package will arrive to you, and validate all of the qualities and packaging, and of course, making sure that it's actually getting delivered to you in time. But not only fulfillment is important, the other next big piece that's really important to really focus on is the customer service. And customer service is not just how the process, again, the order has been processed, and did the customer receive their packing slip, and did they receive their tracking information when the order has been shipped. But it's really also be able to test how the customer can potentially return a product if they didn't like it, and what experience did they receive during the return. How easy was it for them to process the return with you? How easy was it to be able to get to if they had a question, how easy it was for them to be able to leave a review from the web, on your website, or review your product through social media if you are using that as your sales channel, or as if you're using that as your marketing. So one of the things that you might want to take a look at that and use the beta test of the beta test group of the that you gathered from orders from the soft launch, or potentially from the consumer testing beta group that you have worked with back in the product phase, to see if you can collect some of their reviews and see how that process will work for you as well. Very important step not to skip before you're doing a primary launch, because when we do a primary launch, we want to make sure that all of the things are buttoned up, and that the customer experience is going to be flawless from the moment that they land on your site, or they interact with your product, all the way to checkout, all the way to when they're actually going to receive the product in hand. That's what makes launches successful, and satisfied customers who have had a great first-time experience have a much higher chance to come back, and when the customer comes back is when you start to see their revenue growth and start to build the clientele. So in this particular case is where it gets really important to really making sure that before you do the launch, before you invest the money in inventory, before you do all of this, you actually consecutively follow this roadmap and be able to vent out and fine-tune all of the steps that are necessary for you to succeed. I guarantee that if you do follow this roadmap, and if you do follow all of those consecutive steps, you're going to save a lot of money of not be able to invest in them too early into marketing, for example, or into wrong marketing channels that might come and be super appealing and super exciting because they look, I'm going to use word sexy in this particular case, to you, because they might be inviting you to a fashion show, or they might be inviting you into publications of your magazines. And the reason I'm bringing this up because it's just what happened to my current client right now, who we just signed, and at the end of the day, but if it's not matching your customer, or if your customer is not there, or they're not reading those magazines, or they're not going to those fashion shows, then it's really not, there's no point to invest, marketing dollars into that. It's better to invest them in something that it's going to ROI because your customer is there. So everything you do from here on, you got to think about, how is this going to deliver value to my customer? How is this going to help me reach my customer? How is this going to help me to deliver the product that my customer needs? If you ask the questions before you make any next decision, if in relations to your customer, in relations to your brand and product, helping to solve the challenge of your customer, you have a much higher chance to succeed, and will be able to create, see a higher conversion during the launch of your product. So that's going to be a very important thing to think about. And I challenge you to think through that and always look through the lens of the customer before you make any next decisions with anything that you do in your brand or your business. That will really help to navigate and making sure that the customer can relate with your product. Well, today we are now completed our long journey of a roadmap.